So the next snare drum video, we're going to talk about snare drum rolls. So we're going to talk about two kinds of rolls. There's the buzz roll, which you're going to use in concert band and drum set, orchestral playing, all that stuff. The double stroke roll is very useful for hand technique, finger technique, control. You'll definitely use it if you ever play in a marching band, and occasionally drum set and or in concert band you will use this, especially if you're doing a march or something like that. But it does come up. It's very useful and very good for your finger control. But we'll start with the buzz roll. So the idea with the buzz roll is that well, here, let me play it first. So I'm getting multiple bounces from each stick, and I'm doing them fast enough where I can get it to sound really smooth. Okay, so sounds simple, but it's very difficult to get a good snare roll, and it takes time to work on it. It's kind of a long-term project to get a roll to sound really good. I've been playing drums for 30 years or something like that. So I've been doing rolls for a long time. So first of all, you have to realize that there's a lot of energy in this drum. So if you just like bounce it and let it go, there's a lot of bounce, right? So obviously you don't want it to bounce that high, but if you let it bounce kind of naturally, so you can do that a few times. So once it goes down, I'm just like letting it bounce naturally. I'm not doing anything to the stick. And it's good to get it all the way down. So again, you're just kind of letting it pivot on on the fulcrum between those two fingers. The next step is what I call a squeeze bounce. So here that was a free bounce, right? Just holding it between here. Now the squeeze, I'm going to squeeze with that middle finger of either hand, and squeeze it enough to kind of limit that bounce. Like if you ever took like a super ball or some other kind of ball and went and kind of press it down there. That's the kind of the principle that we're doing. So you have to squeeze a lot at first, and then as it goes down, you just stop the pressure, because otherwise it'll sound like this, and it stops. You want those soft bounces, the small ones, because if you do soft rolls, you're going to need those bounces. Squeeze bounces, I'll demonstrate a few more here. I'm not worried about making it sound like a roll yet, but what I'm looking for, consistency in the volume, the number of bounces, kind of the density. Obviously, I'm not counting exactly, but you want kind of the density to sound the same. You don't want one to be like, and the next one to be, right? Those sound really different. Or the volume. So you don't want that either. So the next step from that, doing those basic squeeze bounces, is what I call connected bounces. So doing those squeeze bounces, but making sure that they overlap. So there's no spot where there's not a stick bouncing. All right, and then from there, you go what I would call the roll bounce. So you gradually speed that up until it sounds like a roll. Again, easier said than done. What you want to work on is don't rush into getting it too fast. You always want it to sound good. If you get to a point where it stops sounding even, slow it down again, and then kind of work on until you get it fast. So let me demonstrate that. So again, that will represent many, many hours of work. And my advice is practicing this is to do a little bit every day or a lot every day, but at least a little bit every day. Like if you have time for nothing else to practice, if you have a busy day, although these days we don't, we have a lot of extra time, so yeah, just even 5 minutes just doing some rolls was really helpful. Longer is great, but yeah, even if you had a someday in the future you have a busy day, sports and school and a lot of homework, spend 2 to 5 minutes just doing some rolls, and it's going to be slow progress for most people, but eventually you'll get there. So consistent practice there. So that's basically rolls. A couple other things to think about is the slower the softer the roll is, the slower you can go. So I have more bounces per stroke. You notice my hand speed is pretty slow. This is hard to get these really soft rolls. And as I get faster, I'm going to speed up. And I'm going to have fewer bounces per stroke because they have to be higher in order to get the volume you need. So the louder the roll, again, faster arm speed, and also notice I'm using, it's more for my elbow in rolls, which is not what you want to do normally, but in rolls, because you don't really need the speed here. You want to to transfer the energy into the head, and it gets a little more consistent rather than using your wrist all the time. So it's very different from normal strokes where you want a lot of wrist and finger. So when I'm louder, I'm faster, and fewer bounces, maybe 3 or 4. I've actually practiced a 3-stroke roll just to kind of get that consistent. It doesn't have to be exactly 3, but you're looking for less because, again, they need to be louder. But the stroke speed needs to be faster because you still have to have a lot of bounces in there. And then kind of gradually down. So the really loud ones, we're talking like fortissimo and up, like the really, really loud ones. Even forte maybe sometimes. Now the other ones that are like down like at piano, pianissimo, and below, that one again, you're not squeezing as hard. I mean, you can almost just let it fall. See if I can do that. It's not quite as good to control, but that's almost it. So a little bit of squeeze, not much. Just to get a little bit faster. And you can go pretty slow. So it takes a lot of work to get those. But the main ones, when you're starting to work on it, think like mezzo, forte, forte, kind of in that range. That's the easiest place to do rolls. So now let's jump to double stroke rolls. And as you would say, they're 2 strokes instead of a multiple bounce roll. You just have exactly 2 bounces per stroke. I should also mention, so there's different names for these rolls. So the buzz roll is buzz roll. You can call it a multiple bounce roll, orchestral roll. Some people call it a closed roll. Some people call it a press roll. So that has a bunch of different names, all essentially the same. Then the double stroke roll, you can call it an open roll, or a rudimental roll, or a double stroke roll, and I think those are just those 3 names. Fairly easy to to describe that. So it's pretty difficult. So to practice this, it's nice. And actually, I'm going to turn the snares off so you can hear the individual strokes better. If you can do this slow to fast to slow, like we were talking with the rudiments, all of them you want to do this way. This one especially you want to do slow to fast to slow. Because when you're really slow, you're just doing 2 strokes. You don't even have to use the bounce of the head so much. But when you're going fast, it's all bounce, all fingers. So the transition from 2 strokes to double bounces is the hard part. So let me just demonstrate it. so I've done that a lot, but I remember working on this. It's very difficult. And it's like I said, it's good to practice either on a practice pad or without the snares, because you can really hear your strokes. It's really easy to go into that buzz roll, especially when you're faster. And actually, the same thing with practicing your buzz rolls. You might want to practice on a practice pad or the drum without snares, so you can really hear the bounces. It's not going to sound as good right there, but that's kind of the point, is to listen to it, make sure everything's really even, and then you can turn the snares on and it'll sound amazing if you've practiced enough. So, the buzz roll will sound like this. Turn the snares on. So, it's just a lot better. So practice a lot with on a practice pad or without the snares. So getting back to the double stroke rolls, again, like I said, there's only so fast you can go with double strokes. Let me kind of demonstrate that way. What I didn't mean double strokes, but two actual strokes. So not a bounce stroke, but two strokes. That's about as fast as I can go. If I practice, I might be able to go faster, but that's not roll speed yet. And then with the bouncing, that's easy to do at fairly fast, but getting slower is hard. So if you start fast there, I'm still kind of bouncing there, but it's difficult to do that, and you don't want to be bouncing that because you have very little control that way. So the idea is transitioning from the double stroke from the two strokes to the double bounce, and it's that middle ground that's always really difficult. So what you want to do is you kind of practice up to the point where it stops sounding even. So slow towards the fast, and then also practicing starting fast and then coming back to slow. And if you practice from both directions, eventually you'll be able to meet and be able to kind of go through that. And most people, when they're first doing this, they can't make it all the way through like that. Very occasionally I've had a student that kind of it didn't sound great, but was able to make it through that kind of middle ground. So you want to do that, practice slow to fast, fast to slow. And then also, once you can do that, you kind of want to hang out in that middle area just to really practice that. So tell, if I can show you a little bit. You can kind of see my fingers are making some adjustments there. Let me turn this a little bit. So they kind of catch the stick there. And coming back down or to getting back to the two strokes rather than the double. So that's the double stroke roll. Again, very difficult, very challenging. I would work on the buzz roll first because you'll find that more useful in playing for many different things. But then the double stroke is great for that finger technique and just a lot of control over the sticks. So there you have it, the rolls. And we'll talk about some maybe more technique in another video.